The Romans believed certain vegetables could heal the body, sharpen the mind, even extend life. But here's the twist. Some of their most prized superfoods have vanished from our diets. What did they know that we've forgotten? These ancient greens might change your next meal, and maybe your health. In ancient Rome, farming wasn't just a profession. It was survival, status, and strategy. Rome's power didn't just come from swords and soldiers. It came from the soil. Agriculture was the lifeline of the Roman economy, and farming was one of the most respected paths a citizen could take. Crops fed the people, stocked the markets, and kept the mighty Roman legions strong and ready for conquest. Peasant farms, especially those near the Mediterranean, flourished thanks to the perfect blend of long-growing seasons, warm weather, and sunlight. These farms were bursting with vegetables, which the Romans deeply valued, not only for taste, but for health and healing. So, what vegetables did they worship? Let's start with silphium, or lasapicium, as the Romans called it, one of the most coveted and mysterious plants in the ancient Mediterranean. It didn't grow in Italy, but the Romans were obsessed with it. This strange, now extinct plant became a prized luxury, woven into Roman cooking, medicine, and trade like gold leaf in a mosaic. In Roman kitchens, silphium was the secret weapon, a prized flavor bomb that chefs couldn't get enough of. They used its sap, called laser, like a luxury seasoning, drizzling it into meat dishes, stews, veggie mixes, and rich sauces. It had a musky, slightly sweet taste that didn't really compare to anything else. It was so central to the Roman palate that the cookbook of Apicius, basically the gourmet Bible of the time, mentions it in recipe after recipe. When silphium started disappearing, Roman cooks scrambled for a backup, landing on asafoetida, a strong-smelling relative of fennel. It did the job, but no one was thrilled. But silphium wasn't just about flavor. It was a symbol of wealth, health, and divine favor. The people of Cyrene treated it like gold, sending it to Rome as tribute. Their coins even featured detailed images of the plant celebrating its almost mythical status. In Rome, silphium became more than a spice. It was a status symbol, a sacred gift, and, some believed, a little boost in the bedroom. Silphium grew almost nowhere, just a narrow stretch of land in Cyrenaica, along the coast of what's now Libya. The climate and soil were so specific that the plant refused to grow anywhere else, no matter how hard Roman farmers tried. Even the Greeks had failed before them. It simply wouldn't cooperate. That only made it more desirable. A wild plant, impossible to tame, and worth its weight in silver. Silphium wasn't farmed the way other crops were. The Romans couldn't grow it, so they took it from the wild. Harvesters combed the plains of Cyrenaica, gathering as much as they could to meet the insatiable demand back in Rome. It became a booming trade, tightly controlled by Roman merchants and officials. That's how valuable it was. The city of Cyrene even stamped silphium onto its coins, right alongside gods and emperors. But the plant had one fatal flaw. It couldn't be cultivated, and no one knew how to harvest it sustainably, so they just kept taking. And eventually, they took too much. Silphium disappeared. But you see, silphium wasn't all the Romans cultivated or were invested in. Next up was endive, a leafy green that the Romans appreciated not just for its slightly bitter flavor, but also for its health benefits. Endive was believed to aid digestion and support liver function. It was usually served raw in salads or lightly boiled, providing a refreshing contrast to richer Roman dishes. Columella, the Roman agricultural writer, even recommended it as an easy-to-grow winter crop. The Romans had a knack for making the most of their seasonal crops. To balance out the endive's bitterness, it was often paired with oil, vinegar, and herbs in Roman cuisine. Closely related to endive was chicory, another bitter green that the Romans cultivated for both its crisp leaves and potent medicinal roots. Chicory wasn't just food, it was brewed into teas to sharpen appetite, purify the blood and treat liver ailments, according to Pliny the Elder. It carried deeper meaning too. Stoic philosophers embraced it as a symbol of restraint, humility, and living in accordance with nature. In a world of excess, chicory stood for simplicity with purpose. Then came purslane, a resilient, succulent green that quietly earned its place in Roman gardens. It thrived where other plants failed, pushing through dry, rocky soil with little care. The Romans gathered it fresh for salads or stewed it slowly with lentils, vinegar, and herbs. Its crisp bite and tangy edge made it a favourite in humble kitchens and elite ones alike. Purslane had a reputation for balance. Roman physicians described it as cooling and cleansing, perfect for countering the heaviness of oily or indulgent dishes. Apicius included it in his recipes not as garnish, but as a thoughtful ingredient, something that worked with the body, not just the tongue. To the Roman mind, flavour and function weren't separate ideas. A meal was a chance to nourish and to heal. Greens like purslane were part of everyday cooking because they made people feel better, not in some vague, modern superfood sense, but as a lived daily truth. But one of the more interesting herbs of the ancient Romans was arugula, which was prized for its peppery flavour. Arugula wasn't just a flavour boost, it was also thought to be a mood booster. Romans believed it could spark romance. In fact, Roman poets like Virgil even referenced its fiery qualities in love poetry. How wild is it that something as simple as a leafy green was considered a symbol of passion? Arugula wasn't just used in the kitchen either. It was grown in sacred spaces and kitchen gardens, highlighting its importance in both daily life and spiritual practices. Plus, the seeds were so versatile that they were pressed to make oil for cooking and even used as lamp fuel. Can you think of any modern herbs with such multi-purpose uses? Next up, wild mallow, a tough little plant that grew everywhere from countryside fields to Roman garden plots. It was foraged, boiled into broths, and mashed into poultices to ease inflammation or get the digestive system moving. No frills, no fuss, just one plant doing a dozen jobs. Romans valued it for more than its practicality. Wild mallow was tied to the rustic life, the kind that Stoic philosophers like Seneca praised as pure, disciplined, and closer to nature. For them, simplicity wasn't a limitation, it was a virtue. And wild mallow, with its humble roots and healing power, fit right in. Then came sorrel, bright, tangy, and sharp enough to wake up even the dullest stew. Its lemony flavour lifted lentil soups, cut through fatty pottages, and made meats more tender when used in sauces. Roman herbalists didn't just enjoy its taste, they recommended it for cleansing the blood and boosting appetite. Fast-growing and full of bite, sorrel was both a kitchen staple and a medicine chest ingredient, sour, smart, and right at home in the Roman diet. Scallions were another Roman favourite, mild, fast-growing, and endlessly versatile. They showed up raw in salads, grilled alongside bread and cheese, and occasionally dipped into sauces at casual meals. But beyond the plate, scallions carried symbolic weight. During festivals, they were offered to the household gods as emblems of fertility and renewal. A simple green stalk representing the cycle of life. Humble, yes, but deeply meaningful. From simplicity to indulgence, enter the cardoon, a thistle-like plant and close cousin of the modern artichoke. Romans prized its thick stalks, which were boiled and served with rich sauces or cheese at lavish banquets. It was a true delicacy, not everyday fare, but a plant worthy of elite feasts and second helpings. And then there were parsnips, often mistaken for carrots in ancient texts, but celebrated for one crucial difference: sweetness. In a world without refined sugar, parsnips offered a rare, natural indulgence. Romans mashed them with herbs, baked them into savoury dishes, and spread them throughout the empire. They even brought them to Britain, where the cold weather made them thrive. From offering bowls to banquets to distant provinces, Roman vegetables travelled, evolved, and told stories all their own. And what about skirret? A name you might not recognise, but a flavour you'd probably love. Skirret was a sweet, white root vegetable, kind of like a thinner, more clustered parsnip. It grew in bunches of slender roots and was highly valued by Roman cooks for its natural sweetness and versatility. Roasted, stewed, or boiled, skirret was a favourite in both rustic meals and more refined Roman dishes. It wasn't just good to eat, it was thought to aid digestion and purify the blood. This root was especially important in the northern provinces of the Roman Empire, where colder climates made it one of the hardier vegetables to grow. While it faded from popularity after the Middle Ages, skirret was once a cornerstone of Roman garden life. Could it make a comeback today as a healthy root vegetable? And now, let's head to the seaside with sea kale, a salt-tolerant cabbage-like plant that flourished along coastal cliffs. The Romans, ever resourceful, are believed to have foraged and even cultivated sea kale in seaside regions, particularly in Britain and Gaul. They blanched the tender young shoots and ate them like asparagus. Fancy, right? The larger leaves were boiled or even pickled for preservation. Not only was sea kale tasty, but it was also believed to stimulate the appetite and support liver function, a perfect sidekick to those heavy Roman feasts. Pliny the Elder himself even mentioned the use of coastal greens like sea kale for both their culinary and medicinal benefits. These weren't just weeds growing by the shore. They were respected, valuable, and even luxurious additions to Roman meals. The Romans also cultivated alexanders, which were also known as black lovage. This leafy wonder was a staple in Roman kitchens long before modern celery took the spotlight. With a bold, celery meets parsley flavor, alexanders was the go-to green for soups, stews, and fresh garden salads. The Romans didn't waste a bit. Stalks, leaves, and even seeds were all fair game. What made it a favorite? Well, it was resilient, thriving in poor soil and requiring minimal fuss, which was ideal for busy Roman households or bustling urban gardens. Think of it as the ultimate ancient multitasker. A seasoning herb, a vegetable, and even a garnish, all rolled into one. Can you imagine how different your kitchen might be if alexanders had never fallen out of favor? In fact, it stuck around long after the fall of Rome, holding its ground through the Middle Ages before being nudged out by the rise of today's familiar celery. Now let's talk about something a bit more exotic that the Romans cultivated. The taro, known to the Romans as colocasia. It wasn't native to the Italian heartland, but thanks to Rome's vast trading networks, it found its way onto banquet tables via Egypt and the eastern provinces. This starchy tuber came with a fuss. Eat it raw, and you're in for a bad time. But cook it right, and it becomes a creamy, filling treat with endless culinary potential. The Romans saw taro as a kind of edible luxury, foreign, intriguing, and full of flair. It wasn't an everyday item like lentils or cabbage, but rather a culinary curveball used in saucy dishes spiced with eastern herbs, often served during elaborate feasts. Among their lesser-known garden treasures was also a fascinating plant that's gaining popularity again today, sheltuche. Although keltus is now a beloved staple in Chinese cooking, the Romans were already experimenting with similar varieties of lettuce more than 2,000 years ago. Known for its long, edible stem, keltus may not have had the same name back then, but the Romans were no strangers to using both the leaves and the stem of lettuce in creative ways. They carefully differentiated between wild lettuce, which had a bitter flavor and was mostly used for its medicinal properties, and cultivated lettuce, which was softer, milder, and more suitable for eating raw or lightly cooked. Writers like Cato the Elder and Pliny the Elder offered detailed observations on lettuce's uses, not only as a refreshing salad green, but also as a cooked vegetable for soothing digestion. The Romans even consumed the stem, peeling and boiling it, much like we do with lettuce today. Isn't it impressive how they figured out how to enjoy every part of the plant without the help of modern culinary science? Could sheltus be making a comeback after centuries hiding in plain sight? Now let's talk about another leafy hero of the Roman garden, good King Henry. While its name sounds like it belongs in a fairy tale, this plant was very real and very valued. It was a hardy perennial green, thriving in cooler climates and making itself at home in Roman provinces like Gaul and Britannia. The plant was sometimes called poor man's asparagus, thanks to its tender spring shoots, which were eaten in much the same way. The leaves, rich in vitamins and minerals, were boiled or added to stews and pottage, a common Roman peasant dish. But the value of good King Henry didn't stop in the kitchen. It was also considered medicinal, known to aid digestion and act as a gentle laxative. In an age without pharmacies or synthetic medications, isn't it amazing how Romans used food as both nourishment and healing? Then, there was also scorzonera, You might be surprised to learn that this long, black-rooted vegetable, often forgotten today, was once a popular and highly valued food in ancient Roman cuisine. Scorzonera, with its unique black skin and creamy, mild interior, was a nutritional powerhouse that helped sustain the Romans, especially in the colder months when food was harder to come by. The ancient Romans might not have called it by the name scorzonera, but Pliny the Elder, one of the most famous Roman scholars and writers, documented similar root vegetables that served both as food and medicine. Scorzonera's slightly sweet flavor made it an excellent choice for various cooking methods, as it could be boiled, roasted, or mashed, much like turnips. It was the Romans' go-to vegetable during those cold months, providing them with the necessary nutrients to stay energized and healthy. However, the Romans didn't just appreciate scorzonera for its taste and versatility. It was considered a sustaining vegetable, something that could keep them going during the lean months when food was scarce. They didn't have modern science to tell them exactly why these vegetables were good for them, but through centuries of trial and error, they had learned what worked and what didn't. In a way, the Romans were using natural wisdom, understanding that certain foods, like scorzonera, were perfect for their health and well-being during winter's harsh conditions. Now, let's move on to another fascinating plant from the Roman world, which was purslane. At first glance, purslane might seem like just another weed, but to the Romans, it was far from ordinary. In fact, purslane was one of the most common edible weeds in the Roman Empire, and it was loved for its cooling, soothing properties. What if I told you that this so-called weed was not only nutritious, but also packed with omega-3 fatty acids, making it a fantastic health food, even by modern standards? You might wonder, why did the Romans value purslane so much? Well, it wasn't just the nutrients or its tangy, lemony flavor that made it special. The cooling properties of purslane were highly praised, especially during the summer months when it was used in refreshing salads or boiled as a vegetable. It was even medicinal, as Pliny the Elder described how purslane was used to treat a wide range of ailments, including inflammation, burns, and stomach issues. While we might associate purslane with the poor or humble gardens of ancient Rome, it wasn't just for the lower classes. The wealthy Romans also enjoyed this nutrient-dense green, especially in herb-rich dishes that were bursting with flavor. The accessibility of purslane made it a perfect vegetable for all social classes, from the wealthiest elite to the everyday Roman working the fields. In a way, purslane is a reminder that good nutrition doesn't always have to come from exotic or expensive ingredients. Sometimes, nature provides us with everything we need right under our noses. Purslane, with its cooling and soothing properties, was perfect for helping them manage the stresses of daily life in a bustling empire. It's almost as if they understood, without modern medicine, how certain foods could have a real impact on their overall health and mood. Now, let's talk about fava beans, one of the earliest cultivated plants in the Mediterranean. These legumes were a vital part of the Roman diet, especially for the poorer classes, thanks to their high protein content and affordability. Romans enjoyed fava beans in many forms: fresh, dried, boiled into porridge, or mashed into spreads. With their versatility, fava beans were not just a nutritious food, they were a symbol of survival and sustenance for the common folk. What's even more intriguing about fava beans is their connection to Roman religious practices. The philosopher Pythagoras, famous for his theories on mathematics and philosophy, forbade the consumption of fava beans due to mystical beliefs. This prohibition carried weight in Roman culture, where fava beans were sometimes avoided during certain rituals or ceremonies. Altogether, the Romans were truly ahead of their time, especially when it came to how they used vegetables in their everyday lives. They didn't have the benefit of modern science, but they still managed to unlock the incredible health benefits these vegetables offered, often through trial and error. Can you imagine how innovative they had to be without the technology and knowledge we have today? It's a testament to their ingenuity that they discovered these benefits without scientific backing. What's even more mysterious is how many of these vegetables, once essential to Roman diets, are now overlooked or forgotten. In today's world, we often don't recognize the powerful health benefits they offer. But the Romans knew better. They used vegetables like silphium, parsnips and fava beans for their nutritional value, medicinal properties, and even for their ability to treat common ailments. It's easy to overlook the magic of these humble foods, but the Romans understood how to maximize their potential. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could bring these vegetables back into our kitchens and enjoy their health benefits just as the Romans did? Maybe by incorporating them into our meals today, we could rediscover the natural remedies and nutritional power they once provided. What do you think? Are there any ancient vegetables or foods that you'd like to try or learn more about? Do you think modern diets could benefit from going back to some of these time-tested ingredients?